Hey, you are at the Chatty Curator channel, and today we're spilling the tea with my friend Lucas. Oh, hang on. Wait, it's Lucas. Hi, how are you?
Good morning. It's been a long time.
Yeah, because usually I do my spill the tea video with another guest of mine, but I think today we deserve this conversation because I saw a really good article that you post on LinkedIn.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've had quite a few of these ones written for a long time, but you tend to feel a bit of like a bit shy, a bit hold back. I'm not sure if somebody will be interested in anything that's a little bit philosophical and not just talking dollars, but we'll see.
What motivates you to write this article?
I guess I went on a bit of a learning journey when I created a course for Victoria University in knowledge management. You throw the terms knowledge and innovation and everything like that around, but really it's difficult to have a deep appreciation of what they actually mean and how they fit and in what order as a process. And so I really learned a lot through creating that course and then teaching it over a 2-year period, and learned like the history of knowledge management and the Japanese contribution to knowledge management, mainly the differences between, data, information, knowledge, where learning fits in, and then how we have innovation. Really interesting. I think it's just a really interesting topic. And once you understand it, then you can understand and appreciate how to learn better.
Just wondering, did you start the process before you did your PhD and MBA and those times? Is it?
Yeah, exactly. So in 2014 at Victoria, I came back from overseas and then I wanted to do PhD. And at the same time, I started a company, and that company was dealing with business opportunity evaluation. So people with new business ideas, startups would come to us, we would evaluate their opportunity, and then we would be able to tell them with pretty good accuracy whether they'd get funding and then go on and trade successfully. So I had a really good mentor, the creator of that algorithm and that PhD prior to mine, Professor Kevin Hindle. He was one of the best professors in entrepreneurship globally and had some really good recognition, over 90 peer-reviewed publications, and he's the consummate professor. He loves to profess. So that was basically the genesis for my PhD, was just seeing this amazing algorithm. And we've recently sold that because we sold it to a venture capital trading platform. So obviously lots of companies want money. They want to raise money. So we built a screening tool that was based on a big pile of business plans. So from the big pile of business plans, the research found out with 89% accuracy which companies would get funding based on a set of criteria. And from those companies that got funding, which would then trade successfully for 3 years, meaning 50% increase in revenue, 50% increase in revenue, 50% increase in revenue, could predict that with 79% accuracy. So we built it into a software program and then we on-sold it. So that was really how my introduction into appreciation of knowledge and innovation really grew.
Maybe we can start a little bit about the definition of data, information, and knowledge, which I think is a really good summary of that you wrote.
Yeah. So if you take it even back before data, so computers are made up of just bits of information, right? And a bit of information is data. So on its own, there's not much you can do with it with data. So we say that data are simply facts or figures, pieces of information, but not information itself. And we know we can collect data quantitatively or qualitatively. So we can go and do a survey and then we can analyze that, which is quantitative, or we can interview like we are, which is qualitative. And getting back to that, I've always been a big numbers man, but after 2 years into PhD, I realized that quantitative was never going to answer the question of how can we increase innovation and competitiveness. So I went to qualitative and started doing interviews. So the data on its own doesn't have much value. Information is where you're presenting the data. So you might write a report, you put it in a thesis, you put it in a presentation. So you make it explicit in some way. So you take that data and make it readable or digestible to the user. So we've got a lot of information out there. We know that we can store our information, we can reproduce it, we can publish it, but information on its own is not knowledge. Okay, so and that's where we all fall victim now in 2021. We all want to become more knowledgeable from sliding on our iPhone and glancing at information and expecting to absorb it. It's not the way it works, and we've become really, really demanding and selfish as knowledge consumers now, that we expect to learn without actually becoming knowledgeable. So the transfer of information to knowledge is where you have to give effort. Like, I
You
don't
have
know
to,
about you. If
you
I
have to
read
do the
something,
legwork.
I have to, if I read something, I'm not the sort of person that can be listening to music, have the television on and soak it all in. I have to sit there and I have to try, and sometimes I have to read things 2 or 3 times. Sometimes I have to write down and do a diagram, but once the penny drops, that information then becomes knowledge that you can transfer to somebody else.
There's something a little bit frustrating as marketing managers or people look after marketing, is that sometimes, occasionally, you come across people who just want a marketing plan and then just get you to run for it for a few months and then get some new graduate to do it. The thing is, you do need the legwork, you do need the experience to develop that pizzazz, that little instinct to make things work. And that is not just information. It's not something that you can Google or just go through your smartphone and then learn it. You actually need to put in the work and then see, that works or that doesn't work. I think the crave for knowledge, that hunger for knowledge had been misrepresented of the abundance of information. Because there's a lot of information available. It's wonderful. But if you don't have that ability to filter it, to learn it, to transfer it, translate it, then it just still information, or worse, it just words.
Yeah, that's right, and that's where in the article I mentioned this, and I've always had a lot of respect for having a mentor, and I know that friends of mine have said to me as far back as 15 years ago, they're like, why don't you just get out and do the business on your own? Why are you always working with a mentor? Because I get less of a shareholding and I earn less, but that's what's enabled me now to start my own company and start to become relatively successful, and then see the people who didn't have mentors fledging, like really, really fledging. And the reason is, like, if you think about the best chef in the world can write down their recipe, which takes that tacit knowledge and makes it explicit, right, in a codified form. You can study that recipe, you can try it 100 times, but it's not until you're standing side by side with the chef that you're going to come up with the chocolate cake that's nearly on par with the masters, right? And we don't have enough respect for that. And I think universities really miss that too, because when you're studying at university, I've got a bundle of degrees, but I can't say I ever had a mentor at university.
Yeah, I never had a mentor, and I kind of paid the price for it. But I went mentor. We're not going to go through the entire article because I want people to go use the link to read the article. But towards the end, you share your own story, and I really love the last line, one of the last line, which is the doubt came from the fear of knowing what you don't know. I love
that line. I love that line. So I've
love
got
it
a
too.
diagram here, and I'll read it. I'll read that one out. So that one's, Bertrand Russell said, the fundamental cause of the trouble in the world today is that the stupid are cocksure while the intelligent are full of doubt. And you'll find that. You find so many self-confessed coaches and facilitators throughout LinkedIn, and they're the ones with the least experience and expertise are often the most bold and brash. So you need to sort from between the weeds, don't you? In the top left hand, we see that we know what we know. We all, whether we're a company or an individual, we know that we know things. Then if we're wise, because this is a sign of wisdom, we know that there are things that we don't know. Okay, and that's where we go out and fill the knowledge gap. We find a mentor. We hire somebody. We speak to each other, right? We constantly fill those gaps consciously because we know that we've got knowledge gaps. The other one is your company. You don't know what you know. Okay, so we all know more than we realize. And that's where we've got to untap it. And a lot of that comes from losing the shame and fear of, looking silly, right? Because we all know more than we actually know.
I have a story to share after.
The one to be really, really fearful of is you don't know that you don't know. And that's the one that comes and bites you on the ass, whether you're a company or an individual. That's when you get too cocky.
Gosh, yes, it is. And I think, look, we're in a day and age that, let's just say a couple of generations ago, that you can just do one job and then that one job can last you for the entire career or even further. And that was good for its time. But right now, you know, I mean, if anything 2020 had taught us is that things can change any moment. But of course, there's also opportunities like technology popping up any moment. And who knows, maybe 10 years later, another completely unrelated opportunity would pop up. But then if we just stuck with one set of mindset and not exploring what we don't know or what we know we don't know, but those ones that we will only be trapped inside a small corner. And what was unfortunately could happen is, look, every year there will be some younger, someone fresher ideas to come into the scene.
Absolutely.
You know, it's tricky. In 2016-17, I took almost a year off because I didn't know why. I was making good monies and then but nothing satisfied me. It doesn't make sense. And unfortunately, I didn't have a mentor. Took off, ran away, and tried to start again. Just learning short courses, doing random jobs, and doing some traveling, and learn about things completely outside of my comfort zone or knowledge. But what I didn't know at the time, that is, I guess, that need of change was something that I came from my need of my well-being and my instinct combined it. It's amazing because after that time off, I realized that, oh, these are the things that I didn't know before. But I think that kind of goes into the square of, wait, what I don't know, what I know. For me, my attitude is I'm going to learn until the day I die. So
that's right. We all feel silly if we look back upon ourselves from a year ago. But that's part of being hard on yourself and committing to learning long term. I know, like, this is why it's so important to have a coach and a facilitator. I saw my friend start a company 2 years ago, and and I said to him, because sometimes you've got to deliver the hard truths. We always say, like, when you're evaluating businesses, that not all babies are beautiful, but it's very hard to tell somebody with a new business that your baby isn't beautiful, because our first business, we always get really attached, right? So I gave him the hard truths. I said, look, for this reason, and this reason, but it's not just my knowledge, right? I'm relying on a proven system to evaluate companies. And I told him, and I said, look, I think in this period of time, this business isn't going to work for this reason, and you'll have to go back to this job. And it's happened. Maybe he's not ready to talk to me because it has happened, but you know, the reason is he never had a mentor, and he always said to me, I already know it all. I already know that. And that's very dangerous.
Well, what we can see is, for example, social media, believe it or not, turns out to be a really good live example of how echo chambers can be. And if we really stuck with, we know what we know, that corner of knowledge, then we will only be able to surround ourselves with people like that. And in retrospect, I do feel like that may have been the reason why I was declining, like my well-being was declining before 2016, because I felt that I'm just doing the same thing. What's going on for the rest of my life? But unfortunately, like the person that you were talking about, that maybe at the time that he wasn't ready for that information, wasn't ready for that news. But of course, as professionals ourselves, that it is actually part of our job, even if the news is difficult to digest. But yeah, so well, look, I mean, I wish I had a mentor.
Well, actually, I see you interview professors and lecturers, so part of what you're doing now is in a way selfish, because you get to learn, but that's the beauty of it. You're putting a clever way to absorb tacit knowledge, because you're speaking face to face with people, different areas, and that's the beauty of what you do.
And to be honest, last year when I felt trapped, and I thought about that period of time when I felt that it was really fulfilling. And I was like, okay, well, let's think about this little Get Chatty series. And that's how it all came about. But yeah, so hey, I mean, I am indirectly asking everyone to become a mentor.
Yep. Why not? Why not?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh, the jig is up. Shit. They're not going to participate now. You exposed me.
The other interesting thing is when you're starting your own business, like my previous company that we sold, we evaluated 144 companies, and of that, 10 went on to raise money and they traded successfully. It's very easy to look at somebody else's company and make unbiased decisions and inform them, but it's very hard to look at your own business when you're doing it. And that's why even at New Ledge, like I'm seeking out people for advice. I'm not too shy to say, geez, I've got half a dozen degrees and PhD and all this experience. I'm like, no, I need advice as well.
Well, let's just say that maybe my little bit of street smart can be helpful for working together or whatever.
Absolutely.
Like, so it's because I think that's the great thing about just being open-minded to communicate.
So I think, like, you remember, like 5 or 6 years ago, everybody wanted to. I hate the word entrepreneur. Like whenever you see somebody say I'm an entrepreneur, because everybody wanted to have their laptop and be sitting at the beach and posting Instagram photos. Hey, I've made it. But the chances of success for small business, it's really low. Most businesses, when they start, will stay operational for 2 to 3 years because that's the time you take to suck money out of friends, family, and fools until you really have to get funding. So. So part of them is they're too cocksure. Part of them is too cocksure. The other one is the cost of getting good advice. And that's where I think people like you and I, as advisors, we need to work on that value-based pricing. We need to sit there and say, well, we know you don't have that, the money to pay hourly exorbitant fees. And I don't think anybody should be charging hourly fees anymore. But what if I could take your business from here to here, and we measure the performance? What would that be worth to you? And that's the way you can help these people. And you have to know in yourself that you can get their business from where are you now to where do you need to go. And if you can't, then you have to tell them they're not the client for you.
Well, exactly. Well, I mean, it's like it's a supply and demand chain after all. You got to find the right match. Let's say, I think sometimes that people can take things a little bit too personally because, like you said, it's all their babies. But not all babies are the same.
I don't think there's many successful entrepreneurs out there that haven't had a failure. I can remember I started a business in Korea and it was for factors outside of my control, actually. It was a long story, but what happened in Japan with the nuclear fallout actually ruined my chances of getting some product into Korea to on-sell. And I lost quite a lot of money. And I took it really hard. I got really down about that. It wasn't an exorbitant amount of money. We're talking $20,000, but at the time, and it was more the failure because I was just so cocksure. But a good failure will kick you in the ass, and then you're wiser. You listen to people.
Yes, yes, and that's part of the experience that become your knowledge. It's not something that you can just Google up or just kind of like get a pamphlet and learn it. It doesn't work like that.
There's certainly a bit of magic to starting a business, but there's certain things, and this is what our company did. We would firstly, if I run through them really quickly, we would look at firstly product. So we had product, market, industry, people, and money. So we had 5 pillars that you would assess. There's basically 15 criteria, and they're all weighted a little bit differently. So if you scored highly in one, you didn't need to score as highly in another. But the first one was basically look at the product. Is there something that's novel, and does it have a market impact? The next one was to look at the market and say, well, is the customer receptive to the offering? And how effective are the substitutes at filling that gap? Because we all have competitors, even if we don't think about it. Our substitute products come from a wide range of areas. The other one is the industry attractive? Okay, so you want to get into an industry at the right growth stage. How much capital do we need to invest? Is it marketing intensive? Then you look at your people, because when you're starting a company, the people are really important. They say you back the jockey, right? Not the horse. Then you look at the financials. And financials, when you're starting a business, it's difficult because they're all, you know, who knows? If you haven't got runs on the board, how can you make it? We can all do the most elaborate Excel spreadsheets and come up with a 24-month financial forecast. 3 months later, go, what the hell, right? So there's some criteria you can look at, and you can give somebody a really unbiased, explanation of how this relates to the likely success of their company. But the rest of it is, that how much skin in the game have you got? Do you wake up every morning just fighting off the down and getting into it? Like there's other things that come into it, but you can give somebody pretty good advice about the likelihood of success for a new business.
And one of the elements in it is what I have found, well, not a challenge, but I have noticed that happen quite regularly, is sometimes that I may come across some potential clients that our conversation, there's like, okay, I need to backtrack a little bit and just ask them, like, let's be realistic for a moment. Because from all of the bits that you talk about, for example, finance or those the other four elements, is that sometimes people do overestimate themselves a little bit, or they got a little bit too cocky, or they're a little bit too confident in what they're doing, or too hopeful. But, I mean, for us, that as a profession that we are in, we do need to be honest about, okay, let's step back for a moment, just look at it from a realistic point of view. What can we do? Are you doing the right thing? Look, I mean, of course, like even for any blind seller, there's always a blind buyer, but let's have a look at what can sustain your marketing, what can sustain your business. So that's interesting. Yeah,
I agree. And like you said, but it's not to put them in the hot seat to say, because you see shows like Shark Tank, and
great entertainment, but not that business side.
I've met quite a few angel investors, and I will categorize them all as one, right? It's very easy to be in the chair asking the questions, right? You can make somebody squirm if you want to. Like we can all pull out questions that somebody's not prepared for and make, because when you want money, you're desperate, right? You're like, you want to sell your business.
Yep.
But I really disapprove of that approach. That's not a caring approach. It has to be, you ask the questions, but it's a work in progress. Like if we don't have answers for it, let's go and see if we can work on it to get that score up, that attractiveness for whether you're just trying to get a grant or you're trying to raise capital, whatever it is. Venture capitalists are out there. Most of them make their determination based on gut feeling. So Shark Tank's actually pretty accurate. Now you think how stupid that is. You've got 6 people in a room. I don't wake up the same every day. So how the hell am I going to judge your business the same today as I would tomorrow? And that's why my first company came in with a proven system to at least aid in decision making, right? And I believe that's the combination you need of, let's say, information or a knowledge system, and then the expert themselves, right? So think about, you've got decision support systems which aid in human decision making. So that's what we had. Okay, you go through this criteria, but then the team of people will still give their opinion, right? And that'll have a lot of weighting. Expert systems come along and replace the need for the expert. Now, I don't know that there's many expert systems out there that truly work, because you take the human element out of it, and computers really aren't, I don't think AI is where it should be.
Well, look, I mean, at least right now, it is still proof that a person's knowledge and experience have something important in a place, because it is not something that can be easily transferred. Yeah. But hey, we might have just discovered something like, shows like Shark Tank or even RuPaul Drag Race. It provide people with some data and information to refer to as they are developing their knowledge.
Yeah,
the problem is they're very different shows.
we've all got our bounded rationality, right? And that's what you see. Like when I go home to my small town, because I grew up in a tiny little country town, right? And everybody there is like still in farming community, and I remember being back in that, like that's your world, right? So Melbourne was scary. Coming out of Melbourne was scary. But then as you get more experience, and we all do, we open up and we have a bigger sense of the world, right? So when those Shark Tank advisors are making their decisions, it's like a computer system. They're drawing on their experiences, but still that's just case studies and war stories, right? And what they know today is not as much as they'll know in a year. So that's where the computer or the information system and the human decision making together
Yeah.
I think that's where we're at.
A couple of months ago, we talked about how much activities or money happen in an industry data, but some of them or most of them can actually include failed businesses. I don't remember the exact word of that one, but I wonder if you can share a little bit, because I feel like just being aware of that can be a good pointer of being realistic with one's business. So
you're talking about creative destruction. So there's two things.
That's the one.
The renowned world body, which incidentally my professor Kevin Hindle used to help. I think it's called, damn, I can't remember it now, but they do a world study on entrepreneurship, right? And they consider innovation incorrectly, because they consider innovation as any new business, meaning that if you open up a cake shop next to 1,000 other cake shops, you're thrown into the category of an entrepreneur with a new startup, right? Which I think is incorrect. We should redefine what a bricks and mortar business it's not likely to succeed with innovation is, right? Then there's the thing of creative destruction. So any businesses, and this is why the government falls down, because the government doesn't evaluate business opportunities. Like, I've spent my PhD at CSIRO in Innovations Connections, their flagship entrepreneurs program. Sure, you have to belong to a certain sector like advanced manufacturing or food and agribusiness, but they don't tell you, they don't say, Arthur, look, this business isn't likely to succeed. They just say, do you have the $50,000? Great. Let's put your $50,000 with our $50,000. Let's combine it and do some research with a university. That's the first problem. And their belief, their philosophical belief is, well, failing businesses are still spending money, which they are. You're going to take out a loan, you're going to get rent, you're going to put on employees, you're going to slog it out for a few years, right? And that's called creative destruction. So their theory, philosophical theory, I think it's called, systems thinking approach or whatever, is we will judge industries to be winners, but we won't judge individual firms. And I think that's wrong. Yeah.
It's what happened is, regardless of you succeeding or failing, you are still part of the data. And that data becomes something attractive to attract people into the industry, or and like as professionals or as entrepreneurs. And it actually, you know what? I think this should be its own video. If you want to understand a bit more about this topic, it's on LinkedIn. The link is on underneath this video. Please have a look. I hope you learned something from it. And of course, Lucas, thank you so much for publishing that article and talk about it today. Well, of course, once again, how can people find you if they want to start a conversation with you?
LinkedIn's the social media of choice, or you can just go to newledge, newledge.io.
Fantastic. And of course, that if you enjoyed this video, please consider watching another one. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope you have a good day.
See you later.